In 1978, a leather-bound codex was discovered in a limestone cave near El Minya, Egypt. The document had survived for approximately 1,700 years in the dry desert air. Its papyrus page is fragile but largely intact. Local antiquities dealers recognized that the Coptic script suggested something ancient and potentially valuable. What they did not recognize was that they were holding one of the most controversial religious documents ever discovered. The codex passed through various hands over the following decades. It was stored improperly, handled carelessly, and at one point frozen in a misguided preservation attempt that caused significant damage. By the time scholars finally gained access to the document in the early 2000s, approximately 15% of the text had been lost to deterioration, fragmentation, and destruction. What remained was translated and published in 2006 by the National Geographic Society. The announcement generated international headlines. The document was the Gospel of Judas, a text that early church fathers had condemned as heresy, and that had been presumed lost for over a millennium. Its perspective on Jesus, the disciples, and the events leading to the crucifixion contradicted everything mainstream Christianity had taught for 2,000 years. But the 2006 translation was incomplete. The damaged sections, the ambiguous passages, and the fragmentary nature of the surviving text left crucial questions unanswered. Scholars debated interpretations, theologians argued about implications, and the full meaning of what the Gospel of Judas actually said remained elusive. In late 2025, a research team at a major European university decided to apply quantum computing and advanced artificial intelligence to the Gospel of Judas. Their goal was to reconstruct damaged passages, analyze linguistic patterns, and extract meaning from sections that had defied conventional translation methods. The technology they employed represented a quantum leap beyond anything previously used in textual analysis. What the artificial intelligence discovered in those ancient pages was not what anyone expected. The reconstructed passages contained information about the crucifixion that challenged fundamental Christian doctrine. The theological implications were so significant that several scholars who reviewed the findings initially refused to believe them. This is the story of what quantum artificial intelligence revealed when it analyzed the Gospel of Judas, why the findings have sent shockwaves through academic theology, and why what this ancient text says about the crucifixion may change how millions understand the central event of Christian faith. The Gospel of Judas belongs to a category of texts known as Gnostic Gospels. These documents, produced by early Christian communities that held beliefs significantly different from what became Orthodox Christianity, present alternative accounts of Jesus' teachings and the meaning of his mission. They were condemned as heretical by church authorities in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, and systematically destroyed wherever they were found. The Gospel of Judas was specifically mentioned by Irenaeus, Bishop of Lyon, around 180 CE. In his work against heresies, Irenaeus denounced the text as a fabrication produced by a group he called the Cainites, who he claimed celebrated biblical villains including Cain, Esau, and Judas Iscariot. His condemnation ensured that the Gospel of Judas was suppressed, along with other Gnostic literature. For 18 centuries, the text existed only as a reference in attacks against it. Scholars knew it had once existed, but assumed it was lost forever. The discovery in 1978 proved otherwise. Somewhere in the Egyptian desert, a community had preserved the condemned gospel, hiding it away where Orthodox authorities could not destroy it. The Coptic text that survived dates to approximately 280 CE, though scholars believe it was translated from an earlier Greek original that may have been composed as early as 150 CE. This places the Gospel of Judas within a generation or two of the canonical Gospels, making it one of the earliest alternative accounts of Jesus' life and death. The 2006 translation revealed a text that inverted traditional understanding of Judas Iscariot. In the canonical Gospels, Judas is the ultimate traitor, the disciple who sold Jesus to his enemies for 30 pieces of silver. His name has become synonymous with betrayal. He is condemned to eternal damnation, his act of treachery the most infamous in human history. The Gospel of Judas presented a radically different narrative. In this text, Judas is not the villain, but the hero. He is the only disciple who truly understands Jesus' divine nature and cosmic mission. The other disciples are portrayed as ignorant, worshiping a lesser deity while failing to comprehend the true God that Jesus represents. Most significantly, the Gospel of Judas suggested that Judas's betrayal was not treachery, but obedience. Jesus explicitly instructs Judas to hand him over to the authorities, telling him that this act is necessary to fulfill a cosmic plan. Judas becomes not the betrayer, but the facilitator of salvation, the one disciple with the courage and understanding to do what Jesus required. This interpretation was shocking enough when announced in 2006, but the fragmentary nature of the text left crucial details unclear. Key passages were damaged or missing. The precise nature of what Jesus told Judas about the crucifixion remained ambiguous. Scholars could discern the general framework, but not the specific content of the most important revelations. The quantum AI analysis was designed to address these limitations. The research team employed a system that combined quantum computing capabilities with advanced machine learning algorithms, specifically trained on ancient Coptic, Greek, and related Semitic languages. The quantum architecture allowed the system to process multiple probabilistic reconstructions simultaneously, evaluating millions of possible readings for damaged passages and identifying the most linguistically and contextually plausible interpretations. The AI was trained on every surviving Coptic text, every related Gnostic document, and every parallel passage in canonical and non-canonical early Christian literature. It learned the patterns of scribal error, the conventions of Coptic translation from Greek originals, and the theological vocabulary common to Gnostic communities. This training allowed it to make informed reconstructions of damaged text that human scholars, limited by cognitive constraints, could never achieve. The first phase of analysis focused on the physical document itself. High-resolution imaging captured details invisible to the naked eye. Multispectral analysis revealed traces of ink that had faded beyond normal visibility. AI reconstructed letter forms from fragments too small for human identification. This process recovered approximately 40% of the text that had been considered lost. Passages that existed only as scattered words and partial sentences were reassembled into coherent statements. Sections that translators had marked as uncertain were clarified through comparative analysis with parallel texts and linguistic modeling. When the reconstructed Gospel of Judas was complete, the research team began the process of translation and interpretation. What they discovered would take months to fully process. A quantum AI reconstruction revealed that the Gospel of Judas contained far more detailed information about the crucifixion than the 2006 translation had suggested. The damaged sections that had frustrated earlier scholars turned out to contain the text's most significant theological claims. In the reconstructed passages, Jesus explains to Judas not merely that he must be handed over to the authorities, but why this must happen and what it will accomplish. The explanation contradicts core Christian doctrine in ways that earlier scholars had only glimpsed. According to the reconstructed text, the crucifixion was not a sacrifice for human sin. It was an escape. The Gospel of Judas presents a cosmology in which the material world is not the creation of the true God, but of a lesser, ignorant deity called the Demiurge. This being, identified with the God of the Old Testament, created the physical universe as a prison for divine sparks that had fallen from the true spiritual realm. Human souls are these trapped sparks, imprisoned in material bodies and kept ignorant of their true divine nature. Jesus in this framework is a messenger from the true God, sent to reveal this cosmic situation and provide a path of escape. His mission is not to save humanity from sin, but to awaken humanity to its imprisoned state and show the way back to the divine realm. The crucifixion, in this understanding, is Jesus' own escape from material existence. By having his physical body destroyed, he liberates himself from the material prison and returns to the true spiritual realm. The resurrection is not a restoration of physical life, but a demonstration that the true self survives and transcends bodily death. This interpretation was known from the 2006 translation in broad outline. What the quantum AI reconstruction revealed was the specific instructions Jesus gave to Judas about what would happen during and after the crucifixion. The reconstructed passages contain Jesus telling Judas that the crucifixion must appear to be a real death and sacrifice. The other disciples, who do not understand the true nature of the mission, will believe that Jesus died for their sins. They build a religion around this misunderstanding, and they worship Jesus as a sacrifice to the very deity, the demiurge, from whom Jesus came to liberate humanity. This false religion, Jesus tells Judas, will dominate the world for generations. It will teach the opposite of what Jesus actually intended. It will keep humanity imprisoned in ignorance, worshiping the jailer as if he were the liberator. The masses will celebrate the crucifixion as salvation, while remaining trapped in the very prison Jesus came to expose. But some, Jesus promises, will preserve the true teaching. They will pass down the genuine understanding through secret transmission. And eventually, when the time is right, the truth will emerge and humanity will finally understand what really happened. Judas is instructed to preserve this knowledge. He is told that he will be reviled by those who follow the false teaching. His name will become synonymous with evil. He will be condemned for doing exactly what Jesus asked him to do. This is part of the plan. The truth must remain hidden until humanity is ready to receive it. The AI reconstruction of these passages was checked against every available analytical method. The linguistic patterns were consistent with authentic Gnostic composition. The vocabulary matched other texts from the same period and community. The theological framework aligned with known Gnostic cosmology. Every test suggested the reconstructed text was genuine. Theologians who reviewed the findings faced a profound challenge. If the Gospel of Judas accurately represented what certain early Christians believed, it meant that within living memory of Jesus' death, communities existed who understood the crucifixion as the opposite of orthodox doctrine. The sacrifice for sin, the atonement, the salvation through the cross, all were reframed as misunderstandings that Jesus himself predicted would occur. This did not prove that the Gnostic interpretation was correct. The Gospel of Judas was written at least a century after the events it described. It could represent theological speculation rather than historical memory. But it demonstrated that the orthodox understanding of the crucifixion was not universal among early Christians. Alternative interpretations existed from the earliest period of church history. The implications extended beyond academic theology. If Jesus predicted that a false religion would be built around a misunderstanding of his death, and if that prediction accurately describes the development of 2,000 years of Christian doctrine, what does that suggest about Christian history? Conservative theologians who reviewed the findings argued that the Gospel of Judas should be understood as precisely what Irenaeus called it, a heretical fabrication designed to undermine true Christianity. The Gnostics invented a false gospel and attributed it to Judas to give their teaching spurious authority. The document reveals what the Gnostics believed, not what Jesus actually taught. But this response created its own problems. The quantum AI analysis had dated linguistic features in the text that suggested very early composition, possibly within decades of the canonical Gospels. The Gnostic communities who produced this text were not distant heretics inventing new doctrines centuries after Jesus. They were contemporaries of the communities that produced Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The question of which communities accurately preserved Jesus' teaching became more complicated. Orthodox Christianity won the historical battle, suppressing alternative texts and establishing its interpretation as normative. But winning a battle for institutional control is not the same as being historically correct. The AI analysis revealed additional details that deepened the controversy. The reconstructed text contained what appeared to be specific predictions about future events that seemed remarkably accurate. Jesus tells Judas that false teaching will spread throughout the world, that it will ally with political power, and that it will persecute those who maintain the true understanding. He predicts that the false church will accumulate vast wealth while preaching poverty. It will wage wars in his name while claiming to teach peace. It will control and manipulate the masses while pretending to liberate them. These predictions, whether genuinely prophetic or retrospectively inserted by later authors, aligned disturbingly well with the actual history of institutional Christianity. The Crusades, the Inquisition, the corruption of the medieval papacy, and the alliance between church and empire all seemed anticipated in passages the quantum AI had reconstructed from damaged text. The AI also identified what appeared to be coded references embedded in the Gospel of Judas. Numerical patterns, acrostic structures, and linguistic markers suggested that the text contained hidden messages that would only become apparent to readers with specific knowledge. When the AII decoded these patterns, it revealed what appeared to be instructions for spiritual practices that contradicted Orthodox Christianity. It described meditation techniques, visualization exercises, and ritual procedures that were designed to awaken the divine spark and begin the process of liberation from material existence. The Gospel of Judas was not merely a theological treatise, but a practical manual for spiritual development. These practices bore remarkable similarities to meditation traditions from other cultures, including Buddhist and Hindu techniques that emphasized liberation from material existence. The parallels raised questions about possible connections between early Gnostic Christianity and Eastern religious traditions that scholars had long debated. The research team recognized that their findings would be controversial. They anticipated criticism from both religious conservatives who would reject any challenge to orthodox doctrine, and academic skeptics who would question whether AI reconstruction could produce reliable results. They published their methodology in detail, making their algorithms and training data available for review. They invited independent researchers to replicate their analysis. They acknowledged uncertainties and limitations in their reconstruction. They presented their findings as hypotheses rather than certainties, inviting scholarly debate rather than claiming to have definitively solved ancient mysteries. The response from the theological community was divided. Some scholars praised the application of new technology to textual analysis and began incorporating the findings into their research. Others dismissed the AI reconstruction as sophisticated speculation, arguing that machines could not understand the nuances of ancient texts that required human judgment and spiritual sensitivity. Several prominent theologians argued that even if the reconstruction was accurate, it merely confirmed what scholars already knew, that early Christianity was diverse, that alternative interpretations existed, and that Orthodox doctrine emerged through a historical process that involved suppression of competing viewpoints. The Gospel of Judas didn't disprove Christianity, it simply demonstrated that Christianity could have developed differently than it did. But for many who encountered the findings, the implications were more profound. If Jesus himself predicted that his teaching would be misunderstood, that a false religion would be built in his name, that the crucifixion would be misinterpreted as sacrifice when it was actually escape, then 2,000 years of Christian doctrine rested on precisely the error Jesus warned about. The Gospel of Judas suggested that true Christianity, the teaching Jesus actually intended, was not the religion that conquered the Roman Empire and shaped Western civilization. True Christianity was the suppressed tradition, the persecuted heresy, the secret transmission that preserved genuine understanding while the masses followed a religion Jesus himself had denounced in advance. This interpretation was not new. Gnostic scholars and esoteric Christians had proposed similar ideas for centuries. What was new was the quantum AII reconstruction that revealed the specific details of what Jesus allegedly told Judas about the crucifixion and its aftermath. The text described Jesus telling Judas that his death would appear to be something it was not. Observers would see a man dying in agony on a cross. They would interpret this as punishment, sacrifice, and redemption. They would build elaborate theologies around the suffering and blood. But what actually happened, according to the Gospel of Judas, was something entirely different. The true Jesus, the divine messenger from the realm of light, did not suffer and did not die. The appearance of death was an illusion, a necessary deception that allowed the mission to be completed while leaving the ignorant masses with a story they could understand. The physical body that died on the cross was merely a vehicle, a temporary housing for the divine spark that returned to its source at the moment of apparent death. There was no resurrection of the body because the body was never the point. The true resurrection was the liberation of the spirit from material existence, which happened not 3 days later, but at the instant of physical death. This interpretation challenges the physical resurrection that Orthodox Christianity considers essential to faith. Paul's declaration that if Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile, assumes a bodily resurrection that the Gospel of Judas appears to deny. The empty tomb, the appearances to disciples, the touching of wounds, all are reframed as misunderstandings or symbolic narratives rather than literal events. The theologians shocked by these findings were not shocked by the existence of Gnostic interpretations. They were shocked by the specificity with which the AI reconstructed text anticipated and addressed Orthodox doctrine. The Gospel of Judas didn't merely offer an alternative view, it explicitly predicted that the Orthodox view would develop and denounced it in advance as error. The text attributed to Jesus words that directly contradicted doctrines that would not be fully formalized for centuries after the Gospel of Judas was written. The author, whoever composed this text, either possessed remarkable prophetic insight or had access to traditions that preserved alternative understandings from the earliest Christian period. Neither explanation was comfortable for Orthodox Christianity. Prophetic insight suggested the Gnostics might have been right. Early traditions suggested that alternative understandings were original rather than later corruptions. The quantum artificial intelligence analysis has not settled these questions. It has sharpened them. The technology revealed details that human scholarship had missed, but those details generate more controversy rather than less. What is certain is that the Gospel of Judas, reconstructed through advanced artificial intelligence, says things about the crucifixion that challenge 2,000 years of Christian teaching. It presents Jesus not as a sacrifice for sin, but as an escaped prisoner of material existence. It presents the crucifixion not as redemption, but as liberation. It presents Orthodox Christianity not as true faith, but as predicted error. Whether these claims are true, whether they represent genuine early tradition or later theological speculation, remains a matter of faith rather than proof. The Gospel of Judas is one voice among many from early Christianity, a voice that was suppressed but never entirely silenced. The quantum artificial intelligence has amplified that voice, revealing words that time and persecution had nearly destroyed. What those words mean, whether they should transform faith or be dismissed as ancient heresy, is a question each person must answer for themselves. But the findings cannot be ignored. The Gospel of Judas, finally run through quantum artificial intelligence, says things about the crucifixion that shocked theologians because those things challenge the foundations of the faith that has shaped Western civilization for 2,000 years. The text has spoken across 17 centuries. The message it carried was nearly lost to decay and destruction. Now artificial intelligence has recovered what church authorities once tried to erase. The truth about the crucifixion, according to this ancient document, is not what billions have been taught to believe. Whether that ancient truth is genuine or fabricated, it exists, it can be read, and it demands a response. The Gospel of Judas has revealed its secrets. What humanity does with those secrets is the question that remains.